so let's talk about proofreading a little bit. So basically, proofreading is the last thing you want to do before you finish your project. It's just looking for little mistakes that you made. So what are some good rules of thumb to use when you're proofreading? So we're gonna go through a few of those little rules of thumb. First rule of thumb, slow down. So slow down and read very slowly, considering every word, every punctuation mark. Pretty straightforward. Number two, use the computer's grammar checker, spelling checker. Obviously, most computers have some kind of built-in grammar and spelling checker now. This is very easy to use. All you have to do is let the thing run and let it go through identifying your mistakes and correcting them. So everybody can do that, and because everybody can do that, it's like it's an easy expectation to do, right? To keep your eyes from jumping ahead, place a ruler or a piece of paper under each line as you read. So this is just to focus on the lines as you're reading. You can place that ruler and it gives you, and it sort of like isolates out the line for you and makes it really easy to sort of follow along and pay attention to what you're reading. So you also might read one sentence at a time. Read one sentence, pause, think about the sentence, think, could it be written better, and then move on to the next sentence. You also could do this beginning with the last sentence and working backward. Why might you do this? One reason to do this is because when you read the last sentence first and then work backwards through the paper in reverse order, you're no longer paying attention to the whole big picture of the essay. You're then just paying attention to that one sentence because you're moving through it not in the way that flows, but in the opposite way. And you have to focus a lot more when you do that. It also allows you to consider whether or not things make sense, but in the reverse order. So things made sense going from front to back, but when you start from the back, does everything that came before make sense? And you can consider it in that way. And just that practice, it really slows you down to read backwards. So I don't know if anybody's ever tried. It's easy to read, to say the ABCs forward, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But if you start from Z and try to work your way backward, it becomes that you have to focus a lot harder because it's not, the ABCs are not memorized in your brain in reverse order. They're memorized in alphabetical order, right? So you have to focus a lot harder to get through the alphabet that way. Read the text out loud to yourself. So what's great about this is a really useful one because when you write it down, it might seem like it makes sense to you, but when you read it out loud, it may sound weird. And you might not actually know that it sounds weird until you read it out loud, because then you're reading it and you have to process it. You have to say it, and saying it might sound odd. You also might stumble over it, and if you stumble over it, clearly something's an issue, because if you stumble over it and you wrote it, then the reader is probably going to stumble over it. And it forces you to process it both as writing and as speaking. And if you can process it both ways, it's going to be much more, it's going to be coherent in two different ways instead of just in one way, which is going to lead to better communication. Of course, you could ask someone else to read it. If it doesn't make sense to them, then you can ask them, what point did I lose you? What points are confusing? And ultimately, you want it to be readable by someone else, right? So that's important. And if you make a mistake that you've printed, well, people don't print things as much nowadays, but if you make a mistake in the final product, then you could always issue a corrected version.